All right, hi there, everyone. Welcome to Believe in Bills. Adam Benigni in Amherst, Sal Maiorana inside the Fieldhouse, One Bills Drive, Orchard Park. Bills Jaguars this week, Monday Night Football. And Sal, how you doing, man?
I am good, Adam. We just talked to Josh Allen, and I've been in the locker room for a few minutes here, so ready to pop this baby out.
All right, let's go with it. Buffalo 2-0 after the win, the Thursday night win down in Miami, little mini bye. I think they probably benefited from. And in terms of news of the day, injuries once again, the storyline. And this really doesn't come as much as a surprise. They're going to be without Taron Johnson and Terrell Bernard for this matchup Monday night against 0-2 Jacksonville. And look, if there's an offense that you want to deal with an injury-riddled defense, Jacksonville might be it right now. We'll talk more about them later, but these are obstacles for Buffalo that they'll continue to have to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. We knew that Bernard was not going to play. There was a little bit of outside hope that Taron Johnson could get back because they didn't put him on injured reserve before the Miami game. But Sean McDermott kind of quashed that today and immediately said that both of them are going to be out. So look, I mean, the Bills have already figured out a way so far to play without Taron Johnson. They've had Cam Lewis in there. He's played well. I mean, in 2 games now, he has not looked out of place one bit. There hasn't been a play out there that you would say, Cam Lewis blew that. So he's filled in nicely. That's been a good thing for the Bills. And then losing Bernard last week was that's a big blow. He's a leading tackler in 2023. And Balin Spector had to take over. And look, Balin Spector's been here since 2022, but he really hasn't played defense at all. In fact, last week he played as many snaps in the game last week as he had played his first 2 years on defense for the Bills. And he stepped up, Adam, and played pretty well. I mean, he ended up with 10 tackles in that game. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could plug a guy in who can do that. That's not a bad reserve to have. So now he's got the full week of game planning, which just started today out here in Orchard Park. Get the game plan in. He knows what his role is going to be. And I would expect that Balin Spector is going to be able to play pretty well this week. I think the Bills have confidence in him, and that's why he's getting the start over a guy like Nicholas Moreau, who's a veteran who they signed from the Eagles. He's not getting the start this week. Balin Spector is.
I think in listening to Sean McDermott in his Wednesday news conference, he talked about in reference to that continuity, right? And whether it's Balin Spector, Dorian Williams, you can point to him, Jamarcus Ingram, you mentioned Cam Lewis. I mean, I think they benefit from that and understanding of the system and how to execute and all of those things. But I guess the question I have is, how sustainable is this moving forward with the amount of drop-off and the impact and the sheer number of injuries on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk all we want about Cam Lewis and Balin Spector have filled in nicely, but you're right. Once teams start getting some film of the Bills in this defense with these guys out there, maybe things change. You don't move on from players like Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, and Taron Johnson in the middle of your defense and not be affected. So at some point, we're probably going to be looking at situations. Maybe it happens Monday. Certainly the Ravens and the Texans could take advantage of Buffalo in that area. We'll have to see as we go. So, you don't want to keep playing without those guys. I think the hope, Adam, is that Taron Johnson can get back for the Ravens game. Again, they would have put him on IR if they didn't think he could get back within this 4-week window. So if it wasn't going to be this week, you would hope that maybe for the Ravens game. But we know Bernard, they haven't put him on IR yet. But typically with a pec injury, that's generally a 4-week injury. Last year, Daquan Jones tore his pec, if you remember, and he missed about 2/3 of the season. So I would expect that's probably going to happen later in the week.
Yeah, he did it against Jacksonville in London. Actually, is when that injury took place, along with Matt Milano's. And the Bills have struggled with this Jacksonville team in recent years. We can get into that a little bit later on as the week goes on. But I want to get into something. I thought this was interesting, and I think it, to a great extent, speaks to, we talked after the game Thursday night in Miami about how much credit, really, he takes, a lot of criticism, Sean McDermott does, for things that he doesn't do, particularly some in-game decisions, that sort of thing. But how much credit he deserves for the quality of this defense, the consistency of this defense, his ability and the Bills' ability to deal with these types of injuries, kind of the plug-and-play type thing, next man up. Bobby Babbitt, the new defensive coordinator, also feeds into that. But you had asked Sean McDermott today about the trends across the National Football League in terms of running versus pass, the types of defense that teams are playing. And I thought it was a very interesting answer that maybe kind of fed into some of those results where he talked about, he went back to his days under Jim Johnson in Philadelphia, the defensive coordinator under Andy Reid, and all he learned there and his philosophy. And while some teams were evolving differently in terms of the types of players they're using, Sean McDermott says it really hasn't been all that much his approach and philosophy in working with Brandon Beane, who they're looking for, what they're looking for, and what they're trying to execute on the field. And it dates back to his time in Philadelphia. I thought all of that conversation was very interesting. What's your take on what he had to say?
Yeah, I mean, look, Sean got he had a great mentor in Jim Johnson. When he started off in Philadelphia, that's one of the best defensive coordinators, the NFL has seen in years and years and years. So he built his foundation there. He went to Carolina, started putting in what he learned from Jim Johnson, started mixing in his own concepts and philosophies, and they were very good in Carolina too. And that has all transformed back here in Buffalo. He has come in here, he has established a culture, he has established a system, and he has continually built on it year after year after year. The guys that they bring in, Adam, I mean, this is not willy-nilly drafting and signing to free agents. They have a specific player in mind for every position. And I'm sure every team does that. But Sean and Brandon Beane, they know what they need on this team. They know what skill sets they're going to need to plug into whatever position they're trying to fill. That's what happens when you get continuity in a coaching staff and obviously a front office, right? We see so many of these teams in the NFL, Adam, who just bounce from coach to coach to coach. They never have continuity. You're always remaking yourself. And here in Buffalo, the Bills have been very fortunate that they've had this linear, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane team, and even a lot of the coaches here have been in place for several years. That really helps, team building and setting your culture. In terms of the defense, then what I was trying to get him to talk about was how offense this year really has been lacking in the NFL, right? I mean, it just hasn't been a dynamic start to the season. In fact, I just asked Josh Allen the same question 15 minutes ago here. I said, is it frustrating as a quarterback? Because, 2-3 years ago, 15 quarterbacks a week were throwing for 300 yards. Teams are scoring 30 plus points. It's a passing league, and it has really changed, especially the start of this year. And Josh said, yeah, I mean, it is definitely a concept. The too high safety is making it more and more difficult for teams to get the ball downfield. And it's become a take what the defense gives you. And that's a crappy cliche, but it is true. Defenses no longer want you to get over the top. They want you to work the ball down the field. They figure the more plays you run on offense, the better chance they have to create a turnover. That's kind of how defense is played today. So I asked Sean about, is that the trend that he's seen? And he said, absolutely, but it's actually been happening longer than we think. And he said it goes back for sure to last year, that teams were really starting to transition away from, blitzing, for instance, or, getting after the quarterback, lay back in coverage, make teams have to go the long way to beat you. And so far the Bills have done that, right? I mean, I also asked Josh today, hey, at some point, when are you going to get these receivers involved? And he looks at me with, gives me that sly look. And he says, look, we're 2-0 basically, right? Whatever we're doing is working. We've got 2 wins and we're going to keep doing that. If they want us to run, we'll be happy to run. So that's kind of where offense is in the NFL right now. And I got to say, Adam, I don't like it. I liked it when teams were just rearing back and throwing every play. It was so much more fun. But again, the Bills can't argue they're 2-0.
Well, how well equipped are they to deal with that? I mean, it would think some of those results speak for themselves at 2-0 at this point of the season, particularly back on Thursday night. And James Cook, appropriately named AFC Offensive Player of the Week as a result. I'm talking about James Cook's game, Sal, and whether it's the offensive line or whatever else. I mean, how well equipped are the Bills to play the type of game that's trending right now in the National Football League?
Yeah, well, I think they are, right? I mean, their offensive line has gotten off to a great start, Adam. They really have. I mean, I questioned the Spencer Brown contract extension. I really didn't know that was going to be the right move. Well, 2 weeks in, he's proven me wrong because he's played great. He has been a road grader in the running game. We know Deion Dawkins is already that player. He can dominate in the run game, and they're getting pretty good play in the middle of their line. I don't know that anybody thought that David Edwards was just going to jump in there. I mean, he had been a starter for the Rams, but he was a backup here in Buffalo last year, a rookie. Osiris Torrance beat him out for one job, and then obviously McGovern was there. He stepped right in, and they haven't missed a beat up front. Even McGovern moving over to center. Bills don't miss Mitch Morse at this point. I think McGovern's more of a physical guy than Mitch Morse. So the Bills are equipped to run the ball. And James Cook, I think I like what James Cook has done this year. He seems a little more north-south to me. He's not dancing quite as much as he has in the past, Adam. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I've seen more of a directional north-south, get to the hole, get through there,
right,
rather than tap dancing and bouncing things outside. So that's been good for the Bills running game. And then Ray Davis has been a nice change of pace, right? I mean, they were hoping that Damian Harris was going to be this guy last year, and then he got hurt, and they never really had that change of pace back last season. Ray Davis is that guy right now. He's looked pretty solid in his first 2 games in the NFL, so they are able to run the ball pretty effectively so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that about James Cook. The word deliberate is what I would use to describe his running style, much more deliberate and decisive in terms of hitting the hole, and we've seen the results. But let's get to something that's been trending nationally here, and Josh Allen's always a story, regardless. And Colin Cowherd refers to him as coordinator dependent. And I mean, whether it's overrated or now the ridiculous stuff that's said, and I'm not an apologist for Josh Allen by any stretch of the imagination. He's had to clean things up in terms of the turnover game, and that's fully acknowledged. But the amount of ridiculous statements made in reference to Josh Allen, who's clearly one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and I'm talking about a really short list, right? I had questions about coordinator dependency because he did have that continuity under Brian Daboll, right? But now with what he went through with Dorsey and now Brady, he's completely, to me, answered those questions. I mean, where is that coming from? And do you see it any differently than I do?
No, that was a goofy comment. I mean, everyone seems to talk, when they talk about Patrick Mahomes, yes, he's a great player, and everyone seems to think that, Andy Reid is a great offensive mind. He's a great play caller. But come on. I mean, if Patrick Mahomes was here in Buffalo working with Ken Dorsey or Joe Brady, Patrick Mahomes would still be the same type of quarterback that he is in Kansas City. Well, it's the same thing with Josh Allen. I don't think Josh Allen is reliant on the coordinator. Josh Allen is probably the exact opposite of coordinator reliant, right? A coordinator gives him a system to work in, but then Josh Allen is such a great improviser when he's out there. He can make any system work because of the natural gifts that he has as a quarterback. So I think he's the exact opposite of being coordinator reliant. Again, national guys, Adam. I just laugh when people take anybody in the national media seriously. When they can handle, I understand national guys, they can take the big, broad topics and have their takes, and that might all be fine. But when they start digging in deep on teams, on individual teams who they're not familiar with, I just laugh whenever some of these guys open their mouths because they generally don't know what they're talking about. And Colin Cowherd clearly has no idea that Josh Allen could work in any system regardless of who the coordinator is.
Well, we had talked about it in the run-up to the Miami game last week with Tua Tagovailoa, and the success he's had is a very good system quarterback. But when things break down, mistakes happen. And we saw that before he suffered the unfortunate concussion in the game. We saw some of those breakdowns and what they led to in the form of turnovers and otherwise. Josh Allen's one of the best off-schedule quarterbacks in the NFL, maybe the best.
Yeah. I mean, Tua is the classic coordinator-reliant quarterback, right? There's only a few systems, I think, that Tua could operate in. And Mike McDaniels, the way he operates his system down there is perfect for what Tua can do. I'm not sure Tua can come up here and operate in a Joe Brady or Brian Daboll before that or Ken Dorsey. I just don't think he's capable of doing it. You'd have to really change what you do to make it work. And because Miami has all that speed down there, it fits perfectly into what Tua does. Drop back and get rid of it within 2 seconds and get the ball in their hands and let them use their speed to make plays. That's not going to work in Buffalo. So he is coordinator reliant. Josh Allen is the exact opposite.
All right. So let's, before we move on, I want to ask you one more thing. And we kind of addressed this a little bit earlier when you asked in kind of the nature of your question to Josh Allen today was, when are you going to get the receiving game going? Because one of the things we haven't seen, despite the 2-0 start, is that explosive passing game that the Bills have become known for. Yes, they're in line with trends in the National Football League and teams taking away that aspect of the game, but they're going to need it, Sal, at some point. I think we haven't seen enough for what we expected from Dalton Kincaid, for example. And I think in addition to the receivers, he's very much, baked into this point. How concerned are you about what the Bills have in the passing game at this point? And how much of a need are they going to have to become explosive, because they haven't been yet, and actually dictate offensively within games?
Yeah, I mean, look, they are 2-0, right? We can't argue that. But there's going to be a time, and it could happen Monday night, who knows, that they're going to need to get the ball downfield to their receivers. They're not going to be able to rely solely on running James Cook and Ray Davis and throwing short passes to, whoever it's going to be. The receivers last week, take Shakir out of the mix, the other 4 had 1 catch on 4 targets. I mean, when in the NFL is that ever going to be a way to win games? It was last week, because the game script, that's just the way that game went. It was a unique game. You get a pick 6, you get a 1-play drive when Cook broke the long run, and then the last 28 minutes of the game, they're just trying to run the clock out. So that was a very unique game. They didn't need to throw the ball to the receivers last week. They get in a close game against a good team, they're going to have to start doing that. And I just wonder, we haven't seen it yet, Adam. We have not seen this receiver outside of Shakir, who I think has been very good so far. We really haven't seen these receivers getting involved and getting open for Josh Allen, and that's got to change. And you mentioned Dalton Kincaid. We went into this season, Adam, and I know you and I agreed on this. We all thought the passing game was going to go through Dalton Kincaid, much the way, the Chiefs would do it in the day with Travis Kelce. We haven't seen it at all. I mean, they got him involved. They threw 2 of the first 3 passes the other night. Josh threw to Kincaid, and he caught him, but he only ended up with 4 catches for 33. That's not exactly explosive, downfield passing to your tight end. So I think the Bills have got to start incorporating more of the downfield or intermediate passing game and get these receivers involved. It works hand in hand, Adam. You can run the ball really well, but that can also open up your passing game too. And then obviously if you pass well, it opens up the run. It all works hand in hand. And right now the Bills they've been a little bit one-dimensional. They've relied on the run. It's worked out for them. But moving forward, they've got to get this passing game, I think, more in sync and more in tune with Josh Allen.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, a couple of final points here. Sean McDermott, as you might expect, downplayed the Bills' exploring options on the kicking market at this point, but there's obvious concerns with Tyler Bass. How much do you read into that?
Yeah, look, I think they bring in players every week, Adam. Tuesday is tryout day. And, Sean made the point, and I believe him on this too. I know Brandon Beam would say the same thing. They're always trying guys out because you never know when injuries are going to strike, and you want to at least have a baseline of players that are going to be available in the league. You bring them in, see what their skill set looks like, see what kind of shape they're in, check out their medical, and make sure that if you lose a guy 2 weeks from now, hey, we had player X in, let's bring him back and sign him. So, I don't think Tyler Bass's job is in danger yet. He did only miss the 1 kick. A bad miss as it was. It's only been the 1 kick so far. I don't think his job's in danger. His contract is onerous, as we know. Cutting him would hurt their salary cap this year and next. But you never know. You never know if he keeps slumping. Now they've brought in Anders Carlson and Cade York, just in case, to see if they might be options if Bass gets hurt or if he just continues to stink it up.
All right, quick thought on the Jags here. And they obviously bring some challenges defensively. From an offensive standpoint, on offense, by the way, that the most targeted receiver has been former Bill Gabe Davis to this point. You've got Mitch Morse, former center there, but they have really struggled through 2 games on that side of the ball, just 30 points. They're 0-2. Red zone, 3 of 7. I pulled some numbers here. Third down, 5 of 19. Horrific communication issues. I mean, they simply don't have their act together at this point. They've had success against Buffalo in the past, but overall they've lost 7 dating back to last year, 7 of their last 8 games. What's going on with this Jaguars team?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, their defense is pretty good, but their offense has just been a mess. That was their downfall at the end of last year. They were 8-3, Adam, and they were in charge of the AFC South. And not only did they blow the division, they lost a playoff berth when they lost that final game of the year to the Colts. So I think there's still maybe a bit of a hangover from that. I mean, they have left off, or they have picked up right where they left off last season. Their offense, I've never been overly impressed by Trevor Lawrence. I don't know about you. I mean, number 1 overall pick in 2021, and he's had his moments. He's been a good player at times, but he never seems to blow me away with what he does. And I think that's part of the problem. The other thing is, their offensive line, a little bit of transition. They were horrible. The other day, that safety turned the game. I mean, that kind of put the game away, and they just had a complete communication breakdown down by their own goal line there. Mitch Morse was part of it, actually, and they give up a safety. The one guy that I think the Bills need to be worrying about is Travis Etienne, the running back. Very good player, dynamic as a runner, but if they get him involved in the passing game, that's definitely a problem. So the Bills have got to be aware of that. But, yeah, this offense, unless something suddenly turns around at them, I think the Bills' defense should be able to handle this Jacksonville offense, and then it's going to be a matter of, can the Bills score enough points to win? And I think they'll be able to do that.
All right, much more on those aspects of the matchup. We're going to have Bucky Brooks, former Buffalo Bill, second-round pick back in 1994. Sal, that's a draft that I'm sure you covered.
I definitely covered that draft, the first one after the 4th Super Bowl, yes.
Kind of a guy.
I remember Bucky as a player. He didn't play here long, but he did play a little bit. So we'll have to ask him about his days in Buffalo, but I do remember him as a player for sure.
Yeah, played for 5 NFL teams, kind of a sort of a guy who did a little bit of everything, whether it was wide receiver, defensive back, kick return was also something that became kind of a mainstay in terms of his on the field career. Has done work for NFL Network, has gone the analyst route, and actually covers the Jaguars here on the Believe Network and this network of podcasts. So Bucky Brooks, Friday, looking ahead to Monday night's matchup, 2-0 Buffalo Bills hosting the 0-2 Jacksonville Jaguars on Monday Night Football. For Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, who is with us today from One Bills Drive in the field house just after practice, I am Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live, Buffalo Monday nights, 7 o'clock on Channel 2. Thanks for being with us here on Believe in Bills.